You're watching Inside iOS Dev, your favorite show about real world iOS development.
Hi, guys. Today we have two guests on our podcast, Murali and Aina. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone. So this is Murali. I'm a senior iOS developer. I have been around creating iOS apps for last 8 years. I have a little bit experience on native Android also. I'm from in India.
And what
Uh,
about you, Aina?
Myself, Aina. I'm working from India in a Go-To financial company. It's an Indonesia-based company. So I'm working as an engineering manager here.
All right. And today, what we're going to talk about is interview process tips and tricks and ideas on how to prepare and be ready for interviewing for iOS positions in 2023. And with the current situation of layoffs at the companies and back to not remote, but back from remote to office, all of that stuff. And essentially, what we're going to cover today is kind of interview process and how to prep for it. All right, Aina, Murali, seems like you guys are both interviewing people and interviewing for positions. And I think, Sandeep, you've been doing it lately. I also myself interviewed a few people in the last several months. So let's go round around and just share kind of how our experience has been. And Aina, maybe let's start with you as a as an as a someone who's interviewing people. What it's been like lately.
So, like, I have interviewed many people, and first issue I observed is sometimes people doesn't listen to question carefully. They just start giving their opinion or their knowledge based on few keywords, right? So sometimes that's not an expectation from interviewer. So I think like before giving answer, we should listen to the question carefully, and then only we should just start giving answers. It answers also varies from level to level, right? If you are a junior, then we just expect that you just know about that concept. But if you are a software engineer, then we expect that you should know a little bit in depth about that concept. So if I take an example, right, like what is struct versus class, right? Then I am not expecting here that it you just tell about data type and its storage. Like interviewer also wants to know how it works internally and what can be the effect if you use class instead of struct and vice versa. Uh, Next, if we go to senior software engineer or lead position, there we expect that you know in and out about the topic. Uh, Basically, you have to share your in-depth knowledge there. And if you just tell out basics, then that's not a right fit for from interviewer perspective, right? Because if you know in depth, then only you can mentor your juniors. Otherwise, there won't be any difference between both positions. Apart from this, sometimes we felt like people put loads of information in their resume. We ask them about them, they said like they don't have expertise and they don't have uh, hands-on on that. Then it's kind of frustrating, right? You should mention only the things which you know or you have worked on in your resume. So it doesn't matter where your resume is of 3 to 4 page or 2 page. What matters is how much you know about your resume.
Okay, Murali, how's your experience been as an interviewer lately?
okay. Uh, so I have been interviewed a lot of people from 50s, hundreds when I was in my last recent company, Paytm. So that where we had a new project from the scratch, and then we need to increase the team. My experience towards it, one of the point, as I now told people, doesn't share or discuss. Interviews are more of it's not a question and answer session, right? According to me, or when I discuss with my mentors or other friends. So it should be a discussing session. So instead of just learning few points and then this is like that. For example, the same, the strict versus class. People say it's a preference type, it's a value type. This has inheritance, this doesn't have inheritance. This is stacks and this is heap. That's it. When I went a little bit ahead, why do you think? Okay, stacks are stored in stacks and class are stored in heaps are a little bit lesser. So when to use what? How do you start with? So that was then I hear just a wide response. So that's a no go, right? When anyone can read the book definition or something, and the system is gonna work, whether it's a stack or a class, it's gonna approach it. But the actual use cases should be known. That's the main fundamental I see in interviews. Why you generally use it. You can always skip if you don't know, but just theoretical things are just hit and run, that won't be there. And second thing is, many resumes also I have seen, there was a special use case. We need to hire people who have little bit experience on reactive extensions, the RX bit. So in
Mhm.
that point, many resumes I have seen RX, and the HR person has the recruiter has shortlisted, and then they schedule the interview with us for the next round. But it was like little shocking when we hear that. I know, yeah, I have read about RX. That's why I added in my resume or something like that. The actual people, if you don't have a real experience on what is this reactive world is all about, then it will be a little tough for you to join the team. So that was again other hard feeling. So so if you don't have an actual hands-on experience or at least an idea about it, then adding in the resume will be a no go. So that was one of the other topics. Yeah.
That there's we can go deeper into that too. There's a lot there. Sandeep, so how was your experience as an interviewer?
Yeah, so I interviewed a couple of candidates and I found a common pattern between some candidates that, like, a few candidates were missing on the communication skills. Like, they knew the iOS part, but they don't know how to express it, how to truly communicate it, like whether they know that thing or not. For example, I asked about weak and strong references. The people were struggling to demonstrate us the single concept. They were unable to tell me about in theory, and also while I was asking them to show me an example, they were unable to do it. So I thought there was some communication lag there. And also a few candidates also were very good in theory, but when it comes to the coding part, like, they were just not responding. Like, they were like, they just got lost.
Yeah. Okay. That's that's so interesting. So I would say what sounds to me, guys, there's a theme from what all three of you said, and the theme is of, well, actually kind of what Sandeep kind of summarized it, of communication. Aaina, with your example on people where people just give you a short answer and not going deeper into details potentially, although it depends on the stage of the interview, I would argue, and we'll talk about that on what to focus on each stage. But there it's like a communication problem, right? Maybe they know that stuff, but they just can't explain it or can't deliver it. Murali, same with you, right? Okay, so you say they know the textbook answer, but as you go deeper, you want to hear more from them, and same thing, they just can't explain it. And Sandeep, for you, again, the same thing, but also when it gets down to the code, they might have known the theory, but in practice they just can't use it, right? So that knowledge is no good in that case. I think for me it's the same. So I interviewed a couple people. I interviewed a lot before, and lately less, because I have a smaller team. But I interviewed a couple of people, and that was the biggest differentiator between candidates. Some were very good communicators, and some were not. And that's a little bit ironic, to be honest, for us software engineers. Or not, well, I suppose ironic, yeah, is a word, where a lot of us start our engineering careers, software engineering careers, thinking, oh, it's going to be all about the code, and I don't have to talk to people again, right? And a lot of us are introverted, but it ends up being a lot about communication and talking to people in various forms, right? And interview is kind of one of them, one of the instances of that. Okay, let's move on to give an overview of steps, typical interview process steps that tech companies normally have. I think it would vary a little bit from company to company, maybe region to region, but overall it should be overall the same. Maybe Aaina, let's start with you. What are the steps in your interview process, and then we can kind of compare the notes and see how it goes for the rest of us.
Okay. So I think first round in most of the company is a screening round or exploratory round. It can be done either by HR, like recruiter, or hiring manager. They are just want to know about your past projects, your skills, and whether you are a cultural fit to the company or not. If everything is good here, then they proceed to the next round, which is it varies from company to company. Some companies conduct code pairing round, or some conducts problem solving round or system design round. So like these three rounds can vary from company to company, or some companies just have one or two rounds. So if we talk about coding round, some companies give take home assignment, like you need to submit that solution within 2 or 3 days or 1 week. Some companies does code pairing round, so you have to build something in front of the interviewer, and it's kind of collaborative round. Some companies does refactor, like you have to refactor legacy code. So basically you have a legacy code, and how you can use your skill to make it scalable, testable. Some companies does this data structure related problems as well, just to evaluate your problem solving skills. Some can evaluate your architecture skills as well, like they can give you some problem uh, to solve. In problem solving and system design round, mainly I think most of the company divide topics so that they won't repeat same question in all rounds. And they just like how they evaluate you depends on experience, like for the position you are applying for. If it's junior, that they just want to see your technical knowledge. There are other things as well to evaluate, like your curiosity, excitement, uh, your learning capability. This also plays a huge role in getting that job.
Right.
That's all.
We can go deeper into each one of the steps. Let's tally up and see. Murali, is that kind of overall also steps for you that you typically see?
A little more different points as well. So the traditional rounds maybe when a HR recruiter reaches you, when you shown you're open to opportunities, the first one will be generally to understand what's your need, or the recruiter tells this is the question we have, shared the JT. And then the second round, mostly as far as I know in my friends with other companies, might be a take home assessment test. That's what most of the companies still follows. They just gives the test. Yeah, I think when me and Aina hiring, when we were working as colleagues also, we have given a lot of
Mhm.
yeah, the assessments. I think we both were evaluating daily morning the assessments which we get from the candidates. I think. Yeah, mostly my experience was the take home assessment test as the first one. Once we get the sample app or the project from the candidates, the second one will be a live interactive session. So mostly how we approach this one, what are your technical points, other things. Then if It's according to the candidate. There are no structured formal. If the candidate is very strong enough that we don't have to go through any other rounds, mostly it will be like other engineering manager or a culture fit, other rounds. Mostly technical will stop there. Or if you want, so this is the traditional round. People doesn't care about the data structure or the system design. This is how most of the interviews happen, as far as I know, in my friend's organization also. The second one is a little bit higher level. Once the recruiter have a discussion with you, they will be sending a data structure down, a lead code link or a hacker rank link, something like that. If they intends to have a data structure knowledge for you mandatory, so that you get it. First, you will get a hacker rank link. Then you solve the problems. You submit it. Then it goes like you will have one more take home assessment, or you will be called for a direct interview, or it's online interview, or you will be doing a live session. So then they will have one more design system if they need it. Then they go with the engineering manager, culture fit, compensation details. That's the second thing. So these are the two things. Uh, Two specific round of interviews happening to set up round. There has been quite recently a new trends. I have been able to understand that when I speak with people or something. Instead of if there may be a take home test or it may be a data section, other than this thing, the third round people wants to do a pair programming. So sit with them in live when they come to the office, or in online. They take a specific future in their production code, or in their just a mock project they have. They sit with the candidate and try to work with them, try to understand how they actually work, how they come up with the ideas, how is their attitude, how their communication is. Like Sandeep told, communication is a big factor. So they try to evaluate all these things in a 2 hour pair programming session. Mostly this is quite famous right now. It's one of the interview round. And then instead of this thing, I have been seeing people tries to share a GitHub link to the candidate. So that's a PR link, and then they ask the candidate to, can you review this PR, add your views on it. So then the candidate goes and review the PR, add his view. Then they take it from there. So why do you add this comment? What's your idea? How do you change this code? So these two rounds are quite new, and it's getting familiar more in the most top companies recently. Yeah.
Interesting. I have not heard of the PR review approach. Okay, Sandeep, how about you? What your experience has been like with interview process
So
steps?
what I have seen in the interview process is there are a couple of technical rounds and one behavior round, and the last one is HR round. And in the technical rounds, some companies take one or two DS algo rounds as well. But some companies prefer that DS round should not be there for the iOS engineers, because some believe that we iOS engineers don't require DS knowledge and all. It's fine to have just analytical capabilities which they evaluate eventually. So the one or two technical rounds which they take are mostly based on iOS only.
Interesting. Okay, so let's dig deeper into these steps, starting with, let's say, the first one, and kind of talk through tips and tricks and best practices there, and advice. So it seems like overall, the first round is, well, interview screening, right? If you will, if you call it a round, by normally either HR or engineering manager, but probably, or even another engineer. Actually, I've seen that. But normally it's HR, right? Where there's like correct me if I'm wrong, guys. If there's a set of questions that they ask to just pre-screen the candidate and see if what was listed on the resume is actually at least somewhat matches, right?
Yeah, I have a point, Alex. I think
Yeah.
want to add. So there are few times instead of getting okay, you're shortlisted. I don't know, it's not shortlisted, or sometimes the HR gets few questions from the recruiting from the team, whichever they need a team member. They get a set of questions and they ask the candidate in the initial screening round itself. It's not an interviewing round, basically. They will try to ask, do you have this set of experience? What is your answers for this kind of stuff? Then they collect in that time itself. So that's one of the thing I wanted to add. So the recruiter itself try to ask few questions and ideas, whether do you want to work with this. And I think mostly the points me, Aina and Sandeep said, it's related to most of the product companies, or it's in the um, organization, except the so-called FANG. So it's they have their set of own standards, right? And this is most of the 80% of the other companies. Yeah, that's follow these kind of rounds.
Right, that's a good point.
They follow this round, but I think sometimes it doesn't work well because you're giving HR fixed set of questions, right? And answers. So HR doesn't have technical details here. They are expecting answers just from that sheet, right?
Mhm.
So here you cannot judge that this candidate is a good fit or not. Like sometimes we might lose good candidates.
Right, right.
So I think this round should be done by someone technical person. It can be any engineer or hiring
Mhm.
manager.
Ideally, yes. I've seen both happen. Either just HR kind of having list of question answers and just pre-screen, or yeah, or engineers doing that. Of course, it's better when engineers ask it. But what would be your general advice, guys, on this pre-screen step?
I think this is good round both for interviewer and interviewee. Basically, we are sharing to candidate about how our company works, what it work culture we follows, uh, what is our goal as a company, right? And here we also try to understand what is candidate's goal for his career, what is his expectation from the company. And from interviewee side, I think they should understand whether their career goals are aligned with the company or not, whether they like the process or not. If they find something is not good, get it clarified in that round itself, then only proceed to next stage.
Yeah, yeah. What Aina said is completely correct. Majority of the times when I was interviewing someone, or even in the final rounds, so we had a little uh, incidents. What happened is, the screening round is not just to discuss what's your availability for the interview, what's your compensation or something like that. It's to understand what really I want. Actually, if the recruiter should say, this is our team, this number of people are there, this is what we do, and we work on this architecture or something, they need to share little bit clear JD to the candidate, so what they actually need. At the same time, the candidate should also tries to match his expectation and goals. I have a friend said he was giving interview for a native development, and once he joined, he started to work on React. That was a complete nightmare, right? So yeah, React Native. So that was a kind of, other than this thing, people don't want to work. Some people don't want to work on RX project or something. If they have a very strong RX, then they want to brush up or something. So we need to understand what's the real thing between each side. Actually, that should be discussed in the first screening round. Yeah.
So I have a personal experience here. Like we were interviewing for Flutter position, and candidate wanted to work only in the native. So in that exploratory round, that candidate got to know that he will be working on Flutter, and I said like he will be having less opportunity to work in the native, right? And he was like, after that he was not in mood to further conversation, and he was like, his native career is going to end, right? Because it's hybrid. And then we discussed, and I gave him time, like he can take few days to decide on this. He can talk to his friends, he can talk to mentors, and then if he is fine, then only we will be proceeding for the next round. Otherwise, I mean, it's a waste of time for both, right? If at the last round he says like I'm not interested or I don't want to work on the flutter.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. It's a vetting process, even though it's short, for both sides, right? For the company to quickly kind of gauge the interest of the candidate and see if he or she wants to work with this set of tech and in this kind of environment, or even this type of industry, right? Maybe some people don't want to work on social media apps and instead want to work on, I don't know, travel something stuff, right? Or whatever else. And so there's that, right? And then for candidate, exactly what you guys said, it's time to ask all the questions, the preliminary, right? Do I even want to, am I interested? Right? Does this match this company's potential job, match my personal criteria? So that's a very good round for that.
Yeah, exactly. One point is that I had a couple of years I attended an interview back. I remember the instant after Aaina said that interview was very good. The engineering manager, usually the engineering manager rounds happened at the last. At that time, after screening, I was asked to talk with the engineering manager first. What's what's my expectation and what's your expectation? uh, he clearly said our team already have developers who is expertise on this, that, this. So he said your resume shows that you have a very good UI skills also in the app level. We need someone really strong on UI kit. So he was up to that point. We we need to make our apps a little bit more intuitive. Our UI, we are planning to revamp the UI. We need to add a lot of animations. Have you worked on the Loti, this thing? It was up to clear. Okay, so what is expectation? What is this thing? So then once we both agreed, then I was asked to proceed with the next rounds. So we need to be clear on the initial screening at the first round itself. We should not having a what is the difference of thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, guys, let's talk about the second stage, or I guess, sorry, first step interview after the pre-screen. So normally sounds like it's either a coding session, right, where at least that's what I've seen typically, the interviewer, or sorry, the candidate screen shares, and then interviewer is observing how he or she is like solving the problem, right? And it's normally some either puzzle coding challenge algorithm thing, lead code style, or it's some sort of a more of a real world sample app, iOS app problem where you make a change to a code. Or from what I heard from you guys, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the take home assignment sometimes, right? With either one of those problems, it's either algorithm problem or a more of a feature style problem, right? What are your tips and advice on that stage for developers?
One thing is still the most, let's ignore the DS part. So maybe I think Ainar Sandeep can have a better idea. So what I want to share is most of the companies have a take home assignment. I think still they have given a document. This is what we need. Can you make this app? Can you share this in 2 or 3 days, in a number of days? That's how it still happens mostly. So when you are going to start appearing for interviews, at the time you prepare your resume, other things. So as a iOS developer interview positions, you need to have your say template app kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe a little networking module and a little UI something. So you need to have a template app in your GitHub or somewhere you need to store. And most of the tasks are just to understand how we are approaching it. Okay, so if I'm sharing a project, right, just fetch the GitHub repositories from this API and do a little bit search and display the results. That's it. So they're going to be on a tipler simple format to understand how we are writing the code, how we are approaching the problem. That's it. So if you have a predefined little bit of networking layer, these things ready in a perfect cooked manner, so you can do you can with that help you can start building this application faster. So that one we need to prepare before appearing for the interviews itself. That one I will just put it as a to-doist where before I start the interview. So that one is must. And then once you start doing that take home test, you need to understand what was the expectation. First of all, many of the take home assignments have a mandatory point like to add unit test. So we need to see really because even though we do the implementation in a so clean manner, still we are not able to get through the round because of not adding the unit test, or the unit test are not actually testing anything. So that's a important point we need to understand. If we don't know the unit test, we need to have a little bit idea on okay how to add, for example, a template app or a simple one which I have, I need to have some unit test, then it will be easy to know okay, can we able to test the networking part, can we able to test the business logic or something. We need to have that idea. So two main parts is to understand what is I already have some preparations for it. Second one is what is actually asked in the test. So we need to go through the test and we can able to see what is the expectation here. Some in the most of the tests they will mention as these are the mandatory items and these are the good to have items. So it's always if we have finished the mandatory items, then we can go with the next one, good to have on these things. So regarding the take home assignment, this will be my point.
I would add a little thing is that sometimes take home assignments are just not clear. Actually, seen those that are like the README is not clearly written. Feel free to ask if that's the case. If you don't understand what they're asking you about or how they want you to solve the problem, just reach out to the recruiter and like email or call or whatever and ask them to clarify. Nothing's wrong with that, right? At least
Exactly. Yeah.
it shows like
So,
your initiative to communicate, which is also great. You want that from an engineer. Sorry, go ahead, Aina.
yeah, I think no one is going to judge you based on how many questions you have asked in that email. They just want to see your end output, like what
Mhm.
you have built and how you have built. That's all they expect from you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the API they shared in the document in the test is not working, or if it has changed some parameters, it's not. It's returning integer instead of a string something. So you need to communicate with them, right? They are not going to evaluate as I
Mhm.
not told. Yeah, we need to communicate better. And one important thing, as I told before in the previous session of our talk, is to if you are really going to invest time, be serious about it. Just make sure that you are okay with the take home assignment. We are going to give some time. You are okay with this company, this so and so the responsibilities. This okay, I'm going to invest my time. Then we need to be little serious to prepare the app and to share them, yeah, properly.
Yeah. And I think what helped for me personally when I was the interviewee, actually, attaching a description. So, like, you solve the problem, you change the code, write unit test, and yada, 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 right? But also make in my submission, I would sometimes add like a little paragraph explaining what I did and why, because maybe some of the decisions were not obvious, right? And it essentially turns into this little pull request, if you will, because with a good pull request, there will be a an explanation attached to it on what's the reasoning behind such a change or change in such a way. So that seemed to help me as well. Again, shows your communication skills yet again.
Also, one more point, like add architecture diagram in your README or your MR so that interviewer can understand like what architecture you have followed and how classes are communicating in between.
So Aina, that's actually a good thing you're brought up. is there an expectation to have something like an architectural diagram at this round?
Yeah, because you have worked on some feature, right? It can be either one screen or two screen. If you tell about your architecture, it tells your thought process and how you have built. Sometimes people use different terminology or something. Then it's difficult for your interviewer to understand what is built and what approaches he have used, right? So it's ease out the process, and maybe uh, if they have understood it correctly, then you can process to some line. And sometimes, if things are not clear, even though your feature is working, but your code is not understandable, so you may miss out clearing this round. Because anyone can build app, right? uh, what company expect is how you have built. Is it scalable, testable, like is it meeting expectation or not? That also matters.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't usually in my experience those rounds were smaller challenges, so they didn't warrant a diagram because it wasn't a system design problem. Mainly it was a check on, okay, can you refactor stuff? Can you write tests? Can you find bugs? But I suppose yes, actually that would help if you actually made dramatic changes to the code base to attach a diagram. Yeah, interesting. Murali, I think you wanted to share something too.
Yeah. So there are different parts. The one you said, right? Yeah, little smaller parts for the take-home assignment. I think most of the interviews in India, I think most of the companies give a structure of can you create this contact apps, or can you create a to-do app, or using this API can you fetch and parse and show this booking kind of stuff, or can you do a e-commerce detail page with the set of products from this API. So it will be like a 2-3 screen a working app mostly. In that case, that's the first take home assignment will be. It will be not a minimal effort. It will take it will take like a working prototype. And the second thing is most of them are free in terms of architecture. We are most of the test will be like you we can proceed whatever the candidate wants, Viper or candidate want MBVM or whatever he wants, he will be proceeding it. I don't think somebody said to me that we are interviewing people only with this architecture or something. But then in the case if we are using for example, if Aina if Aina and I are attending on the same company, right? Aina can do in Viper and I tries to do in MBVM something. Then it is good to add a little bit of a small diagram. This classes or this thing is there. If it's a very good to have only. I don't think so. But if people sees home view controller, home view model, then they gonna understand all these things. Or if they want, so little bit of architecture diagram really helps to understand what the architecture is. And then instructions, as you told, it's must to have, because I still remember the first time I was evaluating task. It was hard to understand. Some people at that time used Carthage. Some people might be using Cocoa Pods, and some people might be using their own frameworks for the other third party other things. So it's good to have your instructions whenever you submit a task. Okay, I have done this. The installation is this. These are the third party use. That's it. A few lines will really help, right? It will give us a good impression. Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. I get it now. Yes, you're totally right, guys. If it's a larger assignment like that where you build several screens, for sure, then because in this case you are not given an already done like template with maybe hidden bugs or something like that, or like existing code. You have a free reign to building the whole thing from scratch. Sure, then attach diagram, have more explanation. Actually, it will be a longer take home assignment though, most likely. And what you guys were saying, be serious about it, take your time and build it all out well. Yeah, Yeah, so then it's basically a mini project, of course, with some shortcuts. But yeah, Sandeep, do you have any thoughts here? Because then it's not system design necessarily yet, but we're kind of getting in that territory. Maybe you have some thoughts on it.
I don't have any different thoughts from other these guys, but I have a few questions. What just Aina and Murali told. I was just listening to the conversation and I was wondering. So since you mentioned that we should also provide the architectural diagram, so is that mandatory first of all, and secondary, if it's not written in the requirements of that take home task, should I still provide the architecture diagram? Because it's not clear from the instructions that I should provide the architecture diagram. Maybe the app was complex, maybe the take home task was complex, but since I haven't ever provided any architecture diagram to any other company, I may be good at it, I may not be good at it, but it's not clear from the instructions that I should provide it.
I think if you edit, it will set you different from other candidates. Second thing, I think see, no one wants fancy diagram, right? You can even
Mhm.
draw it on paper and add attach photo, or you can draw in some tools and you can add that. Third thing, I think you should create architecture diagram for whatever feature you create, even in your current company, so that whenever is someone asking you about architecture of that feature, you can just share the diagram and it will give you lots of insights. Sometimes when you have to scale your feature, at the time you can look at your existing architecture and you can think about possible solutions.
Mhm.
So
Got it.
I
Is that
think
true? Is that also true for the junior developers as well, or just for senior developers, or for any kind of
I
developer?
think this is mainly expected from senior engineers. From junior, it's just like how they have written code and whether it's working or not, and whether they have missed expectation or not. That's all.
Got
This is a
got
very
it.
good point, Aina, that it will make you stand out. Even though Sandeep, you're right, it probably is not written in the instructions for the assignment that you got to do a diagram and even a description of your changes, right? Like again, as we were talking about, a little paragraph or whatnot. But if you do, that is extra mile, right? Like extra effort that you put in, which shows that you take initiative, right? You try to communicate better. You are more not well versed, but I guess like advanced engineer if you do that, even if you are not asked. So again, yeah, it will make you stand out indeed.
Let me share an interesting instance I had with. So I took a take home task for a problem, and I did it very passionately. Like I followed all the solid principles. I followed the clean code approach and all. I had the dependency injection and all. And when I got the result, they said you have over engineered the application, so we cannot accept it. So
No, well, yes.
just in a just in
Mhm.
an attempt to stand out, I lost that opportunity.
Yes, technically, although think of
But
it
I
this way,
would take it, yeah, yeah.
it's probably a place where your ideas and your re-engineering and refactoring and solid principles would not be accepted anyway, most likely, because if they didn't like something like that, they don't want it. So at the end, you filtered them out rather than they filtered you. Well, it's both, right? At least in my opinion, because
Yeah,
I
see,
had situations like that too. I interviewed for a smaller company, and I was coming in with like Viper architecture and ribs and solid principles, yada yada yada. They literally, that was on the call itself, reviewing my code, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. The guy said, "Oh well, Alex, you're over engineering this. We're like team of 2 people. We do MVVM. We don't want this." And that was okay. Since they don't want that's fine. I don't want to work at a company that doesn't practice those architectures. So it's mutual and it's okay. I guess the only regret here, if you will, I spent so much time doing it and maybe that felt like a waste. But at the same time, I didn't have to do the rest of the interview rounds with them.
I agree with Alex. I mean, it can happen, and I think it's good for you. Like, like you won't be fitting in the team if they don't accept your ideas and all, and at the end, it will lead to frustration, right? So it's good to know it early stage only.
I think it happened to everyone at some point. If people are not welcoming our ideas and not happy to discuss it, then it's not a good place for me. At least I will think like that. The second point is one incident happened to me is it was the first time during the pandemic I was applying for that was the first company I was giving my all a week full of time preparing this task. That was the first time I'm preparing the template project which I said previously, and then I sent the assignment in a complete manner, but I never heard back after that. So it was complete frustration for me. I did a week full of work and then I sent the assignment, but I didn't even heard any of it. And then another time I just get a few a couple of things. Okay, like it was not mentioned in the document or something. Okay, you didn't approach this way or this way. Yeah, if your doc what are things mentioned in the document, if I able to achieve it, that's the criteria for evaluation. First of all, when I evaluate a task, that's what I do. Other good to have things, other things are an additional benefit that will help us to go through with the next round, that will give a little bit impression how we can proceed with the next round. So that should be the point. Whatever is the given must to have in the document, that's the point we need to do, I think. Yeah, mostly, and the other good things are good to have only.
All right. Let's go to the next step. So sounds like the next step after this take-home assignment is typically either a call or comment to the office if you're physically close to it, right? Where you would be essentially either talking about or pair programming on that take-home assignment code that you wrote. So what? Okay, quickly before we get to the pairing, what is the question answer part typically for you guys? Is that this, oh, what is struct versus class style of questions, or something else about the code that they wrote?
It's combination of both.
Combination
So
of both.
sometimes we start with a submitted assignment like what architecture you have used or why you solved this problem in this way. Do you have any other approaches in your mind?
Mhm.
If scalability was not there, how can we achieve scalability? Or sometimes some people were not able to finish that assignment, right? But still they wrote a code with good quality, so we accept. Then in that round, we ask like, if we give you how much time you need more to finish this assignment, and what mistakes you did while doing the assignment, and that's all.
Mhm.
Apart from this, we ask questions from iOS Swift, like uh, we start with some basic questions, and then we continue conversation based on that, like based on replies. So it can go in any direction from there.
I see. And this is where you were saying in the top of our call, where you would probably prefer to hear more like a deeper answer than just like a short explanation of for those.
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Because here we
Mhm.
want to understand candidates' mindset, their thought process, and all, right? We are not expecting their answers to be 100% correct, but at least we want to know how they think, and if there is any challenge, how they will be solving, right? And
Right.
one weird thing is sometimes we ask question, and if candidate doesn't know answer of that question, then they start speaking anything about that topic, which is like really weird. I think you can skip that question, right? We also know that everyone doesn't know everything, right?
Right. Yeah, you can simply say, okay, I'm sorry, I don't really know exactly
Right.
about this thing. Here's my guess, if you have a guess. But yeah, exactly what you said. You don't have to know you can't know everything. Um, hmm. Okay.
Right.
All right. So I suppose this is then the general advice for at this stage, if you get something like this, sort of a questioning interview style thing, right? Then yeah, be more conversational, if you will. Of course, answer the questions and all, but my personal advice, what I like, how I like to think of it, how would I talk about those topics with a fellow engineer? Not in an interview, but like at with Sandeep, when Sandeep and I used to work together, right? How would I talk about it with him, right? The weak versus strong reference. Well, I probably actually wouldn't even remember the actual definition from Swift language documentation, but I can explain it to him like what it actually is, right? And pointer increase and yada yada yada. And I think that's quite often good enough, because that would show your understanding of it. And are you clear in explaining this? Because if you're a more senior candidate, you will be explaining this stuff to juniors. So you have to be, well, you don't have to, but it's good if you can communicate it well. And then if you're more junior engineer, then, well, still, right? Communication skills are important on every level. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else to kind of add for sort of advice on this part of the interview?
From my side, I think more kind of just say what you know, what are the things you want to uh, guess or something. Maybe it's not good always to guess or say not confident answers. You can also always skip, I think. And sometimes I feel like overconfidence thing is also a bad impression when you don't try it, when you say this is how it should work or something. It's a very bad experience. It's always good to discuss on the topics you know. Yeah. And the interviewer who are asking should also be in a position, they should not have force you or keep this as mandatory things. Yeah, few basics are mandatory. We are Everyone wants to hire a good candidate only. They will be expecting that, but at the same time, they should not be forcing you to do all these things. So always, it's good to skip that things which you don't know. Yeah, and once you are done, right? When people say, "Do you have any questions?" You can always discuss. Can you please elaborate what were we expecting at this question? So maybe what was your expectation on this? Was my replace sufficient? Like this, always try to, it shows a little bit of your enthusiasm trying to learn things. Yeah.
True. It's a good point.
Also, one point I would like to add, like from interviewer perspective, I think in the beginning they should spend some time on making candidate confident, so that they can have discussion in a good manner. Like sometimes candidates are nervous, then even though they know answer, but they are not able to communicate. So I think uh, like environment should be good. There should not be pressure from any side.
Yeah. You're always nervous, regardless of your expertise and seniority. I think everyone's always nervous on interviews to some degree. Okay. So that would be advice for this stage. And then when you get to pair programming part, where normally you would be pair programming on that, on the code you wrote, right? The take home assignment that you finished or not. I mean, maybe it's a little bit unfinished, and that's probably what you would be pair programming together with the interviewer, to finish it, right? Or add a new feature, a new thing, or something else to it, or just simply a discussion about the code you wrote. Maybe it's very good, and the interviewer wants you to kind of explain it, right, and like walk him or her through it. What advice do you guys have on the pair programming part?
So Alex, I think both rounds doesn't happen together in any company. Like either
Mm-hmm.
they will do this take home assignment, or they will schedule code pairing round where you have to solve some problem in front of interviewer.
Interesting. I had both of those. So I get okay. So either or, huh?
Yeah, actually, it happens. So sometimes I have seen because the in the what they do is it's a slight difference between them. Once they give you a take-home test, and the next round will be an interaction or a pairing session on the assignment you did. So how you did, what was this thing, or maybe a pairing session on that. It's not actually you're going to work anything on it, you're not writing any code. It will be based on what you did. Then further questions on that topic again. The second thing is you did a take home assignment, and sometimes, as you told, again and pairing session on their task is a different one. It also happens. Yeah. Sometimes, but it's very rare. It's very rare.
Okay.
Mostly, it will be a take-home test. Then you will have a iOS discussion or something related to that next steps. It won't be having a yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So then for the scenario where you didn't have take-home assignment, pair programming session is kind of the main this big interview for you. It's usually a couple of hours, right, guys? Or at least an hour.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
it will be minimum or something.
Yeah.
It will be
can
very less.
happen for it can happen for 1 to 2 hours. So sometimes problem is shared with candidate just few hours before that round, or sometimes it is shared in the round same round only. So here I think of like problem statement is given by the interviewer, and they also share expectation. So candidates should read all expectation. If they have any doubt, they should get it clarified. And before starting work on the problem, I think they should discuss how they are going to solve that problem. If they have to create something or they have to think about architecture decision, then they should convey a message to the interviewer that I'm thinking this architecture could fit here because of these reasons. And this is pairing round, right? So both will collaborate there. Based on that discussion, he should proceed. And also, while solving that problem, he should interact with interviewer. It should not be like problem is given. Now he's doing coding for the next 1 hour and interviewer is sitting silent. So it should be collaborative because it's code pairing round, right? They are also going to check how much collaborative you are, what's your attitude, do you accept other people's suggestions or not, how adaptive you are, how you solve problem. So many things are judged in this round, right? So many times I have seen like people just sit, like they just focus on their problem, and sometimes they go out of time as well, right? Because they didn't plan the approach correctly. So it should be collaborative. It should not be like I just have to finish problem ASAP.
Right. And normally, what guys do? What do you guys have for this round in terms of a problem? Is it an actual iOS app challenge, or is it more of a algorithmic problem?
Yeah.
So some companies doesn't ask data structure algos in this round. It's mostly related to iOS only. So maybe they can give something to build, or they can ask to refactor existing legacy code, or they can ask you to finish some bugs in the code.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I have had quite a few of those, and they're personally, my opinion, this is like the best interview possible because this is where you truly will show how you actually work at work on a more or less real problem. And yeah, exactly what everything Aina you said, there's just gold there to like communicate, talk things through, be a good pair, right, to your other interviewer in this case. Yeah, kind of show how you would do it at work. Really, is kind of the best approach. Okay, anyone else wants to share anything, or we move on to next steps?
Just the last point. This is more embracing part of the interview process mostly.
Mhm.
Yeah, it will be mostly uncomfortable the first time when you share when you pairs with someone suddenly. Just you met a few minutes before. Yeah, basically it will be little nervous, and then even though we'll try to understand what we may not worked on that before. You will just start seeing. Yeah, it will be a little uncomfortable round, to be honest. That's why most of the companies try to give the home assignment and discuss on it. But still, this round is unavoidable in most of the companies.
But
The
from
pairing.
yeah, sorry. From interviewer perspective, it helps you in identifying many things. Also, I have seen drawback of take home assignment is it takes lots of time. Sometimes people take needs to take leave from their current job, which is not accepted, right? You can't take leave just for to work on the assignment. And sometimes many people drops off from this round because they cannot spend time on this.
Yeah,
I
that's true
think
actually. That's
many
why.
people are many people are fine with this round as they have to spend less time in the interview process.
That's true. I'm one of those people because this is more, in my opinion, pragmatic and practical way of assessing a candidate, because those code assignments, not always, but quite often, are actual iOS app problems rather than, again, algorithm puzzles. And I'd rather take that versus some interview where I'm teased about binary tree traversal, which I never do at work, right? As an iOS engineer specifically. But yeah, it depends. Companies and different people have different perspective on it. So, and then there's a PR round that you guys mentioned. Can you tell us again about it, and then your advice on that round if you have it?
Yeah, quite recently, this interview round became famous in the iOS developer interview process. So basically, the candidates will be given with a GitHub link, a peer link, and it has a specific changes. For example, it will have a clear description or something. Basically, you are asked to review the PR. It won't be like it won't be like a production code base where you don't know anything. It will be like a simple to do app or something. There will be a small change added to it. So that will be waiting to get merged, and then you will review that PR. So that's how it just you will get a review. You need to add your review. Once you are done, then we will be discussing with a live in live with the interviewer. So these are the comments I added. These are my views, or something like that. Basically it is to understand how we are collaborating, like the pairing session, how we are collaborating in the PR rounds. Also, what are the improvements we see here, what's the bug here, something like that. There are a lot of points people are expecting here also, like if there is a force unwrapping starting from that, and then a use of uh, and then we skip to use the weak self, and then other things, how the code violates something others. From the small steps to the bigger one, people review the PR. It gives an idea how we are approaching the code. Yeah, that's one round, one type of round. It's getting famous right now. Yeah.
Aina, any thoughts on it?
I think like there are many ways to perform code review, right? Basically, I personally don't expect syntactical or this like linting suggestions in MR. This should be done by the linting tool itself. What I want to know is whether solution written is scalable or not. Are you able to grasp whole architecture from this core MR? And do you think this solution will affect app performance? So I personally want this kind of suggestions from code review.
Right. For me, I would be also looking at, back to the same theme of all of this, communication, right? How do you communicate? Uh, I guess it's when you suggest or say that something's wrong here, right, in this part of code, that you, let's say, you found something's off or could be refactored. Do you just say, oh, it's wrong, redo it, or like it should be like this, but then not explaining it? Then same thing. I would be looking for more of a explanation on, like, you suggest to change something to another approach, and then why, like, elaborate in your comment. Because same thing, like at work, that would be, you would want to communicate something like this, to share knowledge, to educate more junior developers, let's say if you're a senior, or just in general, like a share an approach with your team. Pull request is a good place to do that, even though it's a little bit too late because the code was already written. But if you iterate on that pull request, that's okay. If you have that culture of, keep changing it based on the feedback, then yeah, maybe you found out a new functional programming RX technique or whatever, where instead of flat map, you can use whatever map, right? Then yeah, this is where you would comment about it, but then also kind of give it substance, like explain it too. All right, guys. So these other steps that we have not talked about, one of them was system design interview. That's a big topic on its own, and we probably will have like an episode about it. And Sandeep and I actually, we on this podcast, we have a couple of episodes recorded with system design, kind of where we do system designing. So you can check it out. We'll add it to show notes. But Murali and Aaina, what are your kind of brief thoughts on that, right? Without going too much deep into details.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, when you are approaching, or you approached by a recruiter, so you need to understand that interview process clearly. So as Sandeep told previously, there are still a lot of companies which don't consider the DS and the too high system design rounds also for a iOS developer. Basically, if they have data structure round or this system design round, then you need to understand, are you particularly ready for those round? Can you able to clear these things? Then only I think you need to approach those rounds. Yeah, basically in the previous interviews I have taken, we didn't had that much of a requirement to have these rounds. Maybe that's why, I don't know what was the need at that time to have a system design round. I think Sandeep or Aina, maybe you guys can share your points on those. Yeah.
So actually, this is not just a system design round, it's a overall technical round, we can say. So as an interviewer, we try to touch every point, like it's architecture, basic concepts, advanced concepts. So that's all we evaluate in this round. And I think, like, if you are a senior software engineer or tech lead, then you should know things in the depth. Even if you don't know everything, you should have some in-depth command in some topics. Like it can be concurrency, UI kit.
Yeah, and I have a question here. So I think this system design round is different from what we do the internal architecture, right? For example, mostly people ask in the system design, how do you see the Uber app is working with the back end, other things. What is real system design? It's not about internally what's the architecture or how you make it internally. This is like a bigger picture. Please correct me, Alex and Sandeep. It's like how WhatsApp is working. How do you think the analytics framework inside the YouTube is? If you are asked to create analytics framework for a app like YouTube, how do you design it? Something like that. Correct?
Yeah, Murali, you got it. That's overall typically what a system design interview is. Although there's two scenarios to it. Either they will just go put you through generic system design interview where you design the whole system, meaning all of the backend services, micro service architectures, APIs, and all of that, and then the client app, and how all of those pieces and the database work together and scale. Or you have a purely mobile-centric, iOS-centric system design interview where you need to diagram Viper stacks or MVVM and view controller groups like of objects, how and services and storages and whatever else, and how they would work together on the client side as a system. So
Yeah.
it depends.
Yeah, I think this that was mandatory for senior engineers. I think senior iOS dev whoever is appearing, that architecture, as you told and Aina told, a little bit deeper. For example, if they wants to explain, I have expertise in MVVM or Viper, they will explain this thing, and their in-depth knowledge on UI. That I think for senior engineers it might be mandatory. What I was telling little back is about the larger system design. That is not that every company asks. Yeah.
So, Murli, for iOS interview, we mainly cover mobile-centric architecture, right? Because you can consider like data is coming from API or from database. That's all you
No,
need to
yeah,
consider.
no, yeah. Nowadays, I think there are few tier one companies or some companies when they expect now senior engineers. For example, I was speaking with a friend in the community a few weeks before. He was asked to create analytics framework for the how do you think the YouTube if you are asked to work on analytics framework as iOS engineer for the YouTube app, how do you design that in the lower level inside the app, and how do you communicate with your own internal analytics or dashboard framework up to this? Or mainly I think the famous question is like how do you think the Uber works inside your app level, and then how do you communicate with your backend? Where do you for example it should be for some banking application it should have only one session, something like that. It's a bigger picture. I think that's what
I
most. Yeah.
I think again they are asking from mobile perspective only. So there are some inbuilt SDKs available in the market, right? Like Google Analytics or some paid other SDKs. But nowadays, some companies are building their in-house SDKs, right? So I think there they want to know your opinion how you would build that analytics SDK.
Yeah, that could be part of the system design interview. I think what I also heard, I never had that, was cache. Like, how do you build image cache or something like that? Although I personally feel like it's too small for system design. But either way, guys, as I mentioned, this is a huge topic. We'll have a standalone episode, probably just about that topic, and we'll screen share as usual and show diagrams and stuff like that. So we'll cover it more. Now, to finish up this episode, what is your advice, guys, on any tips on in the current job market with all of this layoffs happening and people getting called back into the office instead of remote? What are your tips and advice on finding a job for iOS engineers specifically in this current market?
I think build up your portfolio, work on skills, improve them, and have some knowledge which you think like which is rarest to find in the market, so that you can crack the interview. I mean, learn always so that whatever you learn that is going to benefit you.
Murali, Sandeep?
Um, yeah, one thing I always suggest is be closer to the uh, be closer to the community, and then be updated with the latest trends always to just to understand, and then use case oriented knowledge. It's not as far as I started in the first part also, it's not just knowing things theoretically, how it is used internally. A little bit of hands I don't know, it's a hands-on, a little bit of use case oriented knowledges for the interviews, and then be closer with the community, know what's happening, what the trends, what are the things people use or suggest recently. Yeah. And then I think every interview is different. It's according to our particular questions at the company. Know the company which you interview before you appear. That's one of the major thing we need to do. We need to see their apps, what is their basic requirement. Know the company very well before you apply. Yeah.
So
Makes
like
sense.
now Swift
Mhm.
UI and Compose are there, like, but many companies have not used this because of minimum iOS version support, right? I think now people should start exploring these and try to create some open source projects which can help you in getting a new job if
Yeah,
required.
absolutely. If your current app still has a objective C code base, and then you didn't had at least a basic knowledge on Swift UI, nobody is going to hire you, right? That's there actually. Everybody wants at least a minimal knowledge on to you, because it's not a you will work for 2 3 months. It's going to be long when they want to have something. Always, it's good to know latest things at a minimal beginner level at least.
Sandeep,
Yeah,
do you
only
have
just one. Yeah, only just one piece of advice from my side is to be confident, because if you know that you know stuff, you know iOS, you should remain confident. And if you remain confident, half the battle is won.
indeed, indeed. Well, in the next episode, or next episodes probably, we will also cover tips on resume building and just general how to stand out. And I mean, we already talked throughout this call. We talked a lot about what would make you stand out throughout the process. So we'll talk a little more on how to get noticed as well in the first place. There's always this job market's tougher than normal, I would say, than usual, but there is always shortage of engineers. There's always not enough of them, or at least the good ones, right? So become a good one, and then you'll probably, you know, won't struggle as much, and it would be a little easier for you. Any final closing thoughts, guys, or things you want to share before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, basically, whatever, it's up to the next sessions. We can also go through our comments from our listeners. So whatever they feel struggled, or what are the points we discussed here, if they want to have a specialized version, expanded version on them, or if they wanted to talk on something some points specifically related to the interviews, we can cover them in the upcoming sessions. I will leave it to the comments mostly. I'm happy to discuss anything as per the user's request. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Please, guys, leave comments under the video with your questions or any what do you want us to go deeper into detail on, and we'll cover next time. All right, then if nothing else, we can wrap it up, guys.
Subscribe and hit that notification button so you never miss the next episode.